All right. What up, everybody? All right, we're going to do the second part of this here, and I'm going to talk about how, piggybacking off of the last video I did, we rig a couple of common soft plastic rigs over here and what we use. So, another staple that I had to have to go along with my soft plastics and my hooks that we talked about before were bullet weights. I like this pack. It's cheap. It covers a lot of different sizes. There's about 6 different sizes in here. Okay, this is from 1/16, 1/8, quarter ounce, 3/16 ounce, 5/16 up to 3/8 ounce. Okay, for a couple of bucks. Okay, I don't use tungsten. I don't have to use tungsten, and it's extremely expensive. If I am able to get things like that for a specific reason or a purpose, then I will. But it's never anything I'm gonna buy in bulk or quantity or just in case, because the prices on tungsten are just ridiculous. They're taking advantage of people with that. So steel is a better option, I think. These are steel. This is a company called Bullet Weights. They are literally just as good to me, and get them at bulletweight.com or Sportsman's Warehouse or pretty much anywhere. And they have a lot of versions of those, and we'll get to those. But let's go ahead and tie one of these first. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is how to rig a Texas style weedless, otherwise known, not in my ADD brain, as a weedless Texas rig. That's what all the normal people would call that. So, we have our line here, okay? This is what we're going to start with. I'm just using this line as an example, okay? First thing I put on is a bobber stopper. We're a very weeded area. If you're in the open, and you don't have a lot of grass, a lot of brush, a lot of debris in the water, it's more like a stone or sand bottom, then you generally don't need a bobber stopper. I would just run my bullet weight free. I would just put that on first, and that would be it. Here we have a lot of weed, and I don't want my line wrapping around that vegetation in between the bullet weight, and where my hook and bait is going to be sitting. Okay, so if this is sliding up and I'm dragging it through the weeds, this and the eye of the hook are going to catch onto those weeds, and my weedless application is no longer weedless at that point. So that kind of defeats the purpose for me here. So I start with a bobber stopper. Bobber stoppers are much more popular in trout and steelhead fishing, but finding out through experience that they are actually extremely useful for at least 3 or 4 different reasons I can think of in bass fishing. So right now, to slide that on, you take a bobber stopper. This style, there's many different styles. I recommend these. They're the cheapest. They're very, very solid. They work great, and they're the easiest to use, in my opinion. So above your little rubber bobber stop here, you're going to have a loop. You put your line through the loop and feed that line back to yourself. Just go ahead and hold both pieces of line, your end and the end you fed through, okay? While holding both pieces, you grab your bobber stop and slide it onto your line, okay? At that point, you can release those pieces of line and just continue sliding your bobber stop up until that tag end that you passed through the bobber stop loop comes free. And then you can go ahead and remove that from the bobber stop keeper. Okay, now you have a bobber stop on your line. I like to slide it up just a little bit further to give me some room to work, okay? So your next step is going to be to thread on your bullet weight. Now, when you thread on your bullet weight, the point goes towards your bobber stop. If you're not using a bobber stop, then you just remember the point goes away from your bait. The point is always going to be pointing away from your bait, okay? Because if you rig these backwards, again, they're not weedless at that point. And you're going to be frustrated. It will still get the job done in some places, in some instances, but that's not the way you want to do it. So now you have your bobber stopper and you have your weight facing away, okay? Now, as I mentioned before in my last video, something I like to do, and a lot of people like to do, is to add a bead. One, for knot protection when you tie your knot to your hook, and for two, it helps make a clacking sound, which is something that bugs and crustaceans and fish foraging through rocks for bugs and crustaceans on the bottom make. And it attracts predatory fish looking for bait fish to feed on. So you add your bead. Okay, now it should look like this. You have your stop, your weight, and your bead. Now it's time to tie your hook on. Well, I don't know a million knots, and in my opinion, you don't need to. If there's a knot you need to know for a specific application, which there are sometimes good for unique situations, then there's a video you can look up to quickly teach yourself how to tie that knot, and it's not a problem. This is the knot I use for 98% of every joining application I use for line to anything. Line to a swivel, line to a lure, line to a hook. The only place I really don't usually use this is line to line when attaching mono or fluorocarbon line to braided line. But we'll go over that later. So this knot here. Doesn't really matter which side of the hook you go in for this one, okay? Because this bait is going to be allowed, and you want it to move freely in the water. So how the fish inhales this is going to be how he or she inhales it. And the hooks that you get is going to be the hooks that you get. So we're not too worried about how this is going to hinge on that bead. But me personally, out of OCD habit, I hold the hook up and I go in what I would refer to as the back. Okay. So we go in the back, okay, and you just pull your line through, okay. Now, what I was taught here, got to spin your hook. What I was taught is you put your finger over the hook and in between your two pieces of line. In betwixt here. Okay? You're going to want to take those two pieces of line and let your hook hang at the bottom. Okay? Now, with your finger in there, you're going to want to give it a few twists. I was taught 8 twists, and I did that forever. And then I asked him one day, is there something about your 8 twists? And he said, no, that's just the number somebody told me. So I started using 4 twists, and I have yet to have a problem at all with fluoro, mono, ocean fishing, 100+ pound fish, sharks, rays, sturgeon. It just has not mattered. This is my go-to knot. This is what I do. So with your 2 pieces in hand and your hook at the bottom, and this works for lures as well, okay, you're gonna spin this. 1, don't let your hook come up and get caught in the top like that. Keep it in the bottom, okay. 2, it likes to stick me sometimes. 3, 4. Okay. So now you have a tag end here, a tag end here, your main line here, okay, your hook with no twists in between your finger and the hook. This loop should be open like that, no twists, okay? So now you have your loop that your finger is sitting in, okay? Now the way I like to do this, because it creates less problems and it's more consistent, is now I take my tag, I hold my loop up and down, okay? It's not forward and backwards, it's up and down, okay? So the whole of the loop is facing top and bottom. I take my tag in and I pass it up through the bottom, okay? And while still holding my loop, I hold it in my hand, okay? I take it in my other hand. Now, I take that tag end and pass it through this other loop, the loop that was created when I went through the first. We'll create a second loop above it. You want to go back down through that, okay? Now I have a tag end sticking out. What I do is I grab that tag end with my teeth and I pull on my main line and my hook, remembering to grab my hook in a way that it's not going to stab me, okay? So you take a hold of your tag end, take the end of your hook, safe, take your main line and pull slowly on all three. Okay, give it a couple of tugs. That's tight, that's not coming loose, okay? Take my tag in and my teeth again, and I pinch my knot. And my fingers are my guide that stop me from accidentally cutting my main line and causing me to have to retie everything again, and just saves me some time. I use it as a guide, okay? So I put some tension on the line by taking my tag in and my teeth again, and I lay my scissors right on top of my fingers as my guide, and that's where I make my cut. Quick, easy, no-brainer. You could do it in the dark with your eyes closed, and that's kind of what you want for bass fishing, because bass fishing in the dark is extremely lucrative. So we have that tag end off. Now, I like to take a lighter, usually, and not go right into it because it'll catch fire, burn right down into your knot, and snap your knot off. But I do like to just kind of hold it as close as I can, and you'll see it'll start, the line is a nylon line, so it will start to melt, and it'll melt down a little bit, and it'll turn into kind of a bead. It'll get a little bit fat, and that's what you want. So that bead will kind of start to fatten. It runs down close to your knot, and when it gets not touching but fairly close to the knot and you have a good fat little bead, just go ahead and pull the lighter away and let it cool. Blow it on a couple of times, let it cool down, and that fat knot that you created on that tag end, that created a ball of hardened nylon plastic now on the end of this, and that will absolutely 99.9% of the time in most situations, I swear by it, your knot will not ever come loose. Your line will snap, fray. You will have issues of all kinds with your line out there during your fishing adventures, but this knot will never fail you, ever. So I swear by that. Oh, buddy, we're shooting video. You're not in it. Thanks for your help, though. I love you. All right, come on. Say hi. Hi. Hi, Babas. All right, get down. Go on. You can lay back there. So now, you have your rig tied on, okay? You have your bobber stop. We have our weight facing in the correct direction, away from our bait, towards our rod, okay, our rod tip. We have our bead for sound and for knot protection. We have a tried and true knot, simple and easy to tie. You pass it through, you spin it 4 times, you loop it through the loop you made on the bottom, and then you loop it through the loop that just made in the top, and you pull all 3 tight. Sounds a little more complicated than it is, but once you do it 2 times, you'll never forget that knot. So, I take my bobber stopper and I slide it down, okay? I'm a weeded area. I want as little amount of play between this as possible. You can slide this all the way down and pin your weight and your bead there if you preferred, and make it as weedless as possible, and that's okay. I like to slide it up just a hair and kind of cheat and get the best of both worlds. So I slide it up just so that has enough gap for the weight and my bead to get some separation and to be able to come back together. Maybe, if I can, I'll get a little more, okay? I want to get a good clack. I want to hear that sound because I know that's going to put off vibration and sound in the water, and that's going to trigger bites. Okay? So this is about how I set it up for my heavily weeded, high vegetation lakes that I fish here. And like I said, you can do it without the bobber stop in both lakes without vegetation and with vegetation, but I feel like this is going to be your most weedless presentation. Then as a refresher, as I showed you, I got some stick baits. The most common worm you're going to see out there, doesn't matter what brand it comes from, but these are yum dingers, which I think is hilarious and I love saying. So we're going to rig our worm on there. We're going to rig it up to our offset in the eye so that it sits flush from the eye to the point of our hook. We're going to let it sit naturally with the point of our hook across the back. Okay, where we see that shank come in at the bottom, that's where we're going to put the tip in because we want it to fall naturally, just like the way it was as we're holding it. Okay, we've achieved that, passing it through in that manner. Pinch, hide the tip in the body. Now we have a full, completed, weedless Texas rig. And this is the way I like to fish it. You can fish it without a bead, without a bobber stop. It's still a Texas rig, weedless. And you can fish it with the bead, no bobber stop, any fashion of this. But when using the bullet weight and rigged weedless in this form, that's your Texas rig, weedless. Okay. All right. Moving on, we can talk about Carolina rigs. There are some lakes in my area that allow for Carolina rig fishing. They are rocky bottom reservoirs primarily, and it's not as vegetated, and you definitely want to take advantage of the action of the sinking and the dropping of these things. And so a different rigging style, it might be more advantageous in that situation. So the one thing about pegging this being more weedless is an advantage in a weeded area. In a not weeded area where fish can see further, the water might be a little bit deeper, and you want this bait to fall for a little bit longer and give the natural action the bait is designed to have a chance to do what it's designed to do and attract fish as it falls, displacing water. You might want something that allows it to move a little more free. That's where the Carolina rig comes in, okay? Carolina rig is going to consist of some similar but different components, okay? First, you're going to go with a larger bullet weight, okay? Followed by a bead again. No bobber stop on this. 2, a standard swivel. A lot of different types of swivels out there. You can use whichever one you prefer. Just make sure that it does swivel on both ends, and it's preferably a barrel or a straight swivel type. Okay? That's how this works. So for this, you're going to need a leader. I'm going to do this for you in braid because I have this scrap braid. And so for the tutorial purposes and just showing you an example, this is what I'm going to use. Normally, I would use fluorocarbon. Okay, this is something that's more invisible in the water to the fish, and every little bit helps, especially when it comes to things like that with fish species that spook easy to line. So, what you would do is you would take a length of your fluorocarbon, okay? A 2-foot length is preferable, but it depends on the depth of water that you're fishing. Deeper water is going, when fishing a Carolina rig, is going to require a longer leader, okay? And that's kind of just the facts of it. So, let's say we're fishing average size water where most bass hang out when most people are fishing in bassy weather, which is 3 to 7 feet of water. Okay, 3 to 7 feet of water. You're gonna want to go with a 2-foot leader. Okay, so we're gonna go 1 foot, 2 foot. Okay. Yes, I eyeballed that. Yes, it is absolutely mathematically, atomically correct. 2 feet. Promise you. So, first thing I like to do when I have a leader that's going straight to a swivel is just tie the swivel onto the end of my leader. And again, I'm going to go with the same kind of knot. So, put them up there, give my swivel a couple of twists with my finger through there. That gives me my loop. I take my tag in, cinch it up just a hair, just to clean things up a little bit, make it a little more controllable. I'll walk my wrap down just a little bit, and by what I mean by that is I'll take it in my hand and I'll just show you the action of me walking it down. Okay, but I'm gonna kind of gently pull with the hand that the swivel or your hook or your lure is tied on. Okay, it doesn't matter what you're tying on. You can do you can and should do this. I recommend it. But the hand, okay, you're gonna kind of keep a tiny little bit of tension, and you're just kind of gonna re-grip here and make sure you don't have a loose grip on your main line, and then you can re-grip your tag end. And I put the tag end in my mouth, and then I kind of pull up on the tag end with it in my teeth, and I kind of just lightly give a little bit of tapping pressure on this loop that I have on my lure side, okay? And what that'll look like is this. Boom, boom, boom. And see how that tightened that wrap up? That tightened it up. You don't want to tighten it up so much this wrap starts stacking on top of itself. That's bad. You don't want the wrap to stack on top of it. If you pull this too tight and this starts to knot up on itself, when you go to complete the knot, it's not going to cinch down properly, and you're going to end up with something that's not reliable. So I don't recommend that. So again, we made our loops. We cleaned it up. We pass our tag end through the bottom of that loop, which creates that loop, and we pass it down through that loop. Take a hold of your tag end, cinch all three. You don't have to wet it. You just start your cinch. If you cinch all three and you just go, all right, tie, cinch, that loop is going to lock up high up the line, and you're not going to be able to get it down. It's pretty difficult, and sometimes you can grab it with your fingernails and slide it down, but again, that's compromising the integrity of the knot, and it's not proper, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. I just take it in your mouth, take your main line, take your bait end, hook, swivel, whatever, the end of what you're tying the knot to, okay, and you just start your knot a little bit slow. Okay, pull. You'll see everything start to slide. Once you see everything on the knot is starting to slide down that line, then you can just go ahead and continue your cinch until it's tight. Okay, tag end, pinch the knot with my fingers for measurement and guide. Make my cut. Okay. These on a swivel, depending on what you're doing, I burn it down. I'm OCD. I burn it down. I take a lighter and I burn my little tag ends down to create that safety button that I call, or a locking mechanism to make sure that tag end line under any situation does not pull back through that knot. But it never has, but probably because I make sure to do that. So now you have a length of leader line, okay? Length of leader line, about 2 feet long with a swivel, okay? Now on the end of your length of leader line, you can go ahead, tie your hook, 3, 4, okay, clean it up, through the bottom, through the top, cinch it slow, she's sliding, cinch it down, measure, cut, okay, rig your soft plastic, weedless or not, okay, it's up to you. If you don't have a ton of weeds, you don't want to, you just go ahead and you throw that stinking hook, measure it up so it sits right. See, I didn't measure it up, so this is what happens when I don't measure it up. So I put it through the wrong way, okay? Look how it's sitting on that hook now. That's not gonna fall right. That's not gonna act properly, and it's not ideal. Okay, fish will still eat it, but it's not ideal. So we're gonna go ahead and hold that in a natural position and stick that right through there where it belongs. So as it comes through, that stick bait sits the way it should. We're gonna hide our hook, and that is the completed portion of the bottom half of our Carolina rig. Okay, we have a swivel, 2 feet of leader, to a weedless rig with a soft plastic rigged weedless of your choice. Okay, now the top half of that, the bread and butter for this, is going to be your weight and bead. So you're going to slide your weight on first. We're going to use a larger weight with this one, but it just depends on the depth that you're fishing. Deeper water, larger weight, okay? Or how fast do you want it to sink? If you're getting real particular here and you're like, oh, these bass are very much, specifically keying on fast moving, at that point I wouldn't be fishing soft plastics. But if you wanted to, you can make it drop faster if that's effective for you in shallower water. But I normally wouldn't. So I use a larger, 5 to 7 feet. I'm going to use a larger weight, okay? And you're going to go simple. You're, again, point facing away from the bait, away from the swivel, towards the tip of the rod, bead following, okay, to your favorite soft plastic. And in this case, that's going to be a soft plastic on, 2 feet of leader, which would be clear monofilament, okay? The bass won't see it. And then you're going to tie to your main line. 3, shaky, 4. Okay. Even if you're tying it backwards, left-handed, right-handed. I don't know. I'm right-handed. This is the way I would do it, but maybe left-handed, same way. Okay. Not sliding. Measure, cut. Okay. Now we have a traditional Carolina rig. Okay. Now this here is how you would rig this. Now this can slide freely, and the action that this gives us is you cast this bait out, and this weight, this heavier weight, sinks faster than everything else, sinks first, and allows this soft plastic that sinks slowly to fall behind it, and it just falls behind the weight, fluttering, and has a very good action and water displacement to it. That is highly attractive to predatory fish. And that is how you would set up your Carolina rig. And those are the 2 basic ways to rig soft plastics using bullet weights. There are some other ways, and I will talk to you about those other methods at another time. But today we're just going to try and keep it short and simple, not a forever kind of thing. This is just trying to help people out, or maybe give some people some ideas, some refreshers, maybe something to think about, a different way to do things slightly that they think, oh, maybe that fixes a problem I didn't know I had, or, just hope it helps, basically. So these are our bullet weights again. These are steel. I choose these cheap pack for my starter rebuild kit. It has 6 different varieties of weight in here, all the same shape. And that's what those are used for. Like I said, there are a few other niche applications you can use those for, but that's the peanut butter and jelly. If you want to add potato chips or bologna or weird stuff to your peanut butter and jelly, I'm not gonna knock you, but that ain't the way it's done. But that is the way you can do it, and that's okay. So, in keeping up with those weights, just a little add-on before I let you guys go. These come in a wide variety, as I said. They sell them in lead. You're not supposed to really be using the lead weights in California, but they're not illegal, so you can. You just have to look up your body of water. Some bodies of water might specifically forbid that you use lead weights there. So you want to do some research wherever you go and make sure that's not the case if you do have lead weights, because you'll show up and not be able to use them, and that's a pretty hefty fine. And you don't want to get in trouble with those people. So anyways, I use steel. Steel is cheap as lead, if not cheaper sometimes. And it holds up better. It's not as soft. It doesn't bang up as bad. And it still also comes in colors. So what we have in this one here is like a metallic green. This is like a green pumpkin. This is a common color. It matches this worm that I have, and it matches these worms that I have, and a lot of other soft plastics that I have, because it's a very common color and it's a good color to go with. Things in the water are often green. So I got these in a multitude of sizes. 1/2 ounce for deeper water, or for getting through heavy mat, like heavy vegetation on the top. Again, another topic, punching, that we'll talk about another time. These come in a many, many, many different variety of colors. So I have the green, I have brown, natural earth tone brown colors. I have black. They had all the weights in black. So I got my small finesse to just allow something very, very light that maybe I want to be able to cast this further, so I need a little extra weight on my lure, but I don't want it so heavy that it's sinking through the grass underwater. I want it to just hit the water, go far, hit the water, sink, and land on top of the grass, and I'm going to retrieve this across the top of the grass. I'm going to use something like these guys here, these 1/8, or even smaller, lighter than that, or weightless if I have to. And then also this Galaxy Purple, metallic purple, whichever you'd like to call it, just drives fish crazy sometimes. They absolutely love it. So yeah, that's a couple of ways to rig your soft plastics with those EWG hooks that I was showing you guys and recommending in my previous video, with some affordable bullet weights in the 2 main staple ways of rigging those, which would be a Texas rig, either with your weight pegged to your lure or bait, or unpegged, allowing that bullet weight to slide freely between the bead and your Texas rigged weedless bait. The other alternative, again, being your tried and true. What did we do? We snagged them all up here. Your other option would be your Carolina rig, which is going to be I don't want to say finessier, but I mean, it is finessier, but it's not more finesse. It just allows your bait to trail more, whatnot. But, your Carolina rig, where your weight is going to always slide free. You can peg these two for different purposes, but that's just kind of defeats the purpose to me. There's just no reason you don't got to do that. So just let that swing free to your swivel. Let your bait trail behind and fall at its own speed, doing what it does, wiggling and wobbling, and just looking like a call to dinner to hungry bass. And sometimes trout and catfish, if you want to have a really good time. So, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you very much, and hope that helps. So, take care. Have a good night. Bless you guys.